Just 20 years ago, cash moved through nearly every transaction on Earth. Today, over 90% of retail payments in China never touch a single banknote. India erased 86% of its currency overnight. Hundreds of thousands of ATMs have vanished from streets worldwide. Cash is disappearing faster than almost anyone predicted, and to understand why, you have to go back to the world that made it feel permanent. A world built on cash once felt as solid as the coins in your pocket. Every morning, bakery counters and market stalls opened with tills full of change, ready for a day's worth of hand-to-hand transactions. Wages arrived in crisp envelopes, counted out by payroll clerks who knew every face. On city corners and in quiet villages, street vendors traded goods for bills, no questions asked, no paperwork required. Whether you were buying a newspaper, a cup of tea, or a bus ticket, cash was the one thing everyone trusted to work every time. Cash carried three quiet superpowers. It belonged to everyone, rich or poor, city dweller or farmer. No ID, no account, no electricity needed, just the right note or coin. It kept your business your own, leaving no digital trail. And when storms knocked out the grid or strikes shuttered banks, cash kept moving, powering commerce when nothing else could. For the world's unbanked, over 1 billion adults, cash wasn't just a choice, it was the only way to buy, sell, or save. Entire supply chains sprang up to keep this machine running. Armored trucks on midnight routes, bank vaults stacked with currency, and armies of clerks sorting, counting, and guarding every bill. Even the smallest transactions, like a child buying candy or a vendor making change, became tiny rituals of trust. In many places, handing over a banknote was more than payment. It was a gesture of respect, a sign of being part of the community. For decades, it seemed impossible that anything could replace such a universal, resilient system. Yet beneath the surface, the very strengths that made cash unbeatable were quietly setting the stage for a revolution that no one saw coming. In 1950, a New York businessman forgot his wallet at lunch, and the Diners Club card was born. Suddenly, a slip of cardboard could buy dinner at select restaurants, no cash required. At first, only a handful of places accepted it, and merchants balked at a 2 to 3% cut taken from every sale. Yet the idea caught on. By the late 1960s, banks began issuing plastic cards with a magnetic stripe, packing account details into a thin black band. The world's first major ATM appeared in 1969 at a Bank of America branch, letting customers withdraw cash without a teller. It felt futuristic, but even as machines replaced humans, cash still reigned supreme. Skepticism was everywhere. Small shops grumbled about card fees eating into razor-thin profits. Some worried about fraud, with stories of stolen cards and magnetic stripes being copied by clever thieves. For many, the old way, handing over a bill and getting change, seemed safer, cheaper, and more personal. Then came the internet. In 1998, PayPal launched with a promise: send money to anyone, anywhere, with just an email address. Online auctions and early e-commerce sites found a new engine for trust, but even PayPal charged nearly 3% per transaction, and buyers and sellers had to trust a digital middleman. Security standards like PCI DSS arrived in 2004, but digital payments still felt risky and unfamiliar to most. These early experiments didn't topple cash overnight. They chipped away at its monopoly, showing that money could move in new ways, sometimes faster, sometimes with a fee, always leaving a trail. The foundation was set for the shocks and surges that would soon push the world toward a cash-light future. On November 8, 2016, India's government did something almost unthinkable. Overnight, 86% of the country's cash was declared worthless. Every 500 rupee and 1000 rupee note made invalid. In cities, crowds surged outside banks, desperate to swap old bills for anything that would buy food or pay wages. In rural markets, shopkeepers watched their cash drawers empty, unable to make change or pay suppliers. For millions, daily life stalled, but in the chaos, a new kind of money began to take root. The National Payments Corporation of India, a little-known tech collective, had just launched the Unified Payments Interface, UPI. At first, it was a niche tool, barely 100 million transactions a month. Then, as cash vanished, UPI exploded. By early 2024, more than 20 billion payments moved through UPI every month, touching everything from street snacks to rent payments. QR code stickers appeared on vegetable carts and corner stores. For some, digital payments opened doors to microloans and formal credit. For others, especially the unbanked, the elderly, or those without smartphones, the new system felt like a locked gate. Winners and losers emerged in real time, their fortunes shaped by a single policy shock and the relentless rise of a digital rail that now moves more money in a month than most countries see in a year. In China, the future of money arrived not by government decree, but through the relentless pull of convenience. By 2023, more than 90% of all retail payments in China flowed through two super apps, Alipay and WeChat Pay. A single QR code printed on a stall, a taxi window, or even a street musician's sign became the new universal handshake. Shoppers in Beijing scan their phones to buy breakfast, pay rent, or split a bill with friends, all without reaching for a wallet. For merchants, the math is simple. QR-based payments charge as little as 0.1 to 0.6% per transaction, far below the fees of old card networks. On a typical weekday, over 1 billion QR scans ripple through city streets, linking every corner store to the world's largest digital payment grid. But this market-driven surge brought new forms of oversight. Chinese law now requires fintech giants to upload granular payment data to state regulators. Every scan, every transfer feeds into government databases that monitor spending in real time. Privacy fades as digital footprints multiply. Meanwhile, the central bank is piloting the eCNY, a digital yuan designed to work even offline. Early trials show eCNY payments are 12% faster and shave another 5% off merchant fees, making cash look slow and expensive by comparison. In just a decade, China's cash economy has shrunk to a shadow. It is proof that when technology, habit, and policy collide, a new kind of money can take over almost overnight. Then came a shock that no one planned for. In early 2020, as the world locked down and shopkeepers taped handwritten signs to their doors, the rules of money changed overnight. Suddenly, every handshake, every crumpled bill, and every coin felt risky. Grocery clerks wore gloves, cafes refused cash, posting QR codes in the window. On buses and in corner stores from New York to Nairobi, signs urged customers to tap, scan, or swipe, anything but hand over paper. The numbers tell the story. In the United States, mobile wallet use jumped by more than 30% in just 1 year. Apple Pay, Google Pay, and contactless cards found their way into millions of new hands, while cash faded from registers and wallets. For many, the first tap to pay felt like a health precaution. But habits formed fast. By the end of 2020, contactless payments were not just safer, they became easier, faster, and frictionless. If you are fascinated by how technology rewires daily life, now is a good time to subscribe for more stories about the future of money and beyond. The story is only getting started. The pandemic did not invent digital payments, but it did something else. It made going cashless feel urgent, even inevitable. And as the world reopens, the question is not whether we will keep using cash, it is what happens next, when the dust settles and the consequences come into focus. The world's cash infrastructure is quietly vanishing. In 2010, there were 3.1 million ATMs scattered across the globe, and by 2024, only 2.4 million remained. In Sweden, where less than 5% of payments now use cash, entire city blocks have lost their last cash machines. The change is visible in the routines of daily life. A retired cashier in Malmö, once proud of her steady hands counting krona, now finds her local branch shuttered and her pension deposited straight to a card she barely trusts. She keeps a small envelope of bills tucked away, just in case, but shops rarely accept them. Meanwhile, a young street vendor in Nairobi tapes a fresh QR code to her fruit stand. With each scan, her phone buzzes, a sale, a record, a tiny commission deducted before she ever touches the money. She remembers losing coins to pickpockets and banks that closed before she could cash out. Now, digital payments bring new customers but also new worries. What if the network goes down? What if the fees rise? As cash fades, the infrastructure that once held communities together, bank branches, armored trucks, even the simple act of making change shrinks, replaced by invisible rails and silent algorithms. The world gains speed and reach, but some lose the comfort of certainty, and others lose the only system they ever trusted. Half of the world's central banks are now prototyping digital currencies, racing to shape the next chapter of money. These state-backed experiments, known as central bank digital currencies, promise features that cash and cards never could. Programmable money could allow governments to send targeted relief instantly, or set rules so that disaster aid can only be spent on essentials. Offline capability is being tested too, with Sweden's e-krona and China's ECNY both piloting payments that work even when the network goes dark. For merchants, zero or near zero transaction fees could tip the balance, making digital acceptance cheaper than cash ever was. But every design choice comes with trade-offs. Linking digital wallets to a person's identity can fight fraud, but it also raises the specter of constant surveillance. Programmability could make spending more efficient, or it could mean someone else decides how, when, or where your money is used. Meanwhile, private cryptocurrencies offer freedom from banks and borders, but wild price swings, sometimes over 50% a year, keep them risky for everyday spending. As the world's payment rails split between state control, programmable logic, and decentralized code, the next generation will face a new dilemma. Who gets to decide what money can do, and who gets left out when the rules change? Cash once defined trust. Now, algorithms and apps shape who gets to pay and who gets left behind. As digital rails replace bills, access and privacy are rewritten in code. No technology stays on top forever. Subscribe, watch the next story, and stay curious about what is coming.